Sean Esbjörn-Hargens was recently a guest on the Danny Jones podcast, and he told Danny something that I found absolutely incredible. He said a CIA agent told him that we have a DNA test that we run on humans to see if they have alien DNA. And apparently we've done that. Yeah, let's dive in, y'all. What? If you're new to the channel and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. Put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day. Please hit that like button, vetters. That really helps out the videos. So thank y'all so much for the support there, vetters. And of course, comment down below. What do you think about this test on humans to determine if they have alien DNA? What does that look like? What are they testing for? How do they know what to look for? Right? How do they know it's alien? Anyway, let's dive in. Got the clip queued up. Just be patient. It gets there. It's not right at the beginning. All right. So just bear with me. Let's do this. There's some other things to talk about.
And this is the other thing, is like part of my study of this phenomena using my integral approach is I've identified, over 35 different theories about who are they and what are they, right? There's the time traveler hypothesis, the crypto-terrestrial, the ultra-terrestrial, the extraterrestrial, the, sociological hypothesis, like there's all these different theories people have. When I map those out and I look at what are the different variables that they're highlighting, like, where are they from, what's their kind of consciousness they have, what kind of bodies do they have, what's their intention. When I look at like 8 different variables about what's being described, and I look at the 3 or 4 possibilities of like, oh, they're on this planet currently, or they're from other planets, or they're interdimensional. When I kind of map out all the variables, there's like 25 variables. And what's interesting is these theories, these 35 different theories that have emerged over the last 2 decades, essentially, when you add them all together, they're accounting for these 25 different possibilities. So in other words, what seems to be happening is every conceivable combination of who they are is represented in kind of this growing list of who they might be. And it seems that actually all of them are potentially true in some sense, or at least a majority of them are true.
Interesting.
So that there are ultra-terrestrials, there are crypto-terrestrials, there are extraterrestrials, there are interdimensionals. Like all of this seems to be happening, right? And it's kind of this Pandora's box. And this is partly why some people have certain experiences with some of those, and other people have other experiences with, different sets, right? And
make sure to remind me to tell y'all one day about my own little theory about what they could be, because there's a lot more than just what he's talking about, right? Let's be real. Digital aliens. That's right. I don't want to get into it now, but one day I will reveal that.
And then you kind of end up arguing, well, who's right? Well, actually, I think the cosmos is so diverse and creative, there's a good chance we're likely interacting with all of those different possibilities.
Well, I mean, when it comes to an individual's perception of something that happened, or an individual's experience, if they believe something, I mean, you can't deny that, but you can't say that there's extraterrestrials. There's no evidence, right? We have zero evidence that there's any sort of life from outside the Earth.
Yes and no. It's interesting because you see these positions, like there's no evidence and there's a lot of evidence, right? And you have this back and forth. There is a lot of evidence. Is there a lot of scientific evidence? No, scientific evidence is a higher bar. And yes, like there's still things need to be done to meet that standard. If we talk about legal evidence, there's plenty of evidence that would satisfy definitions of evidence in a legal court of law, right? And
Can you give an example?
Well, like witness testimony. So in a scientific context, it doesn't hold a lot of water. In a legal context, it can hold a lot of water. And so you can convict someone, without a weapon, without the murder weapon, based on witness testimony and circumstantial evidence and a lot of other things, right? If you took
I agree with him there. Let's be real, right? Eyewitness testimony for science, they don't care what you saw, right? You always hear scientists screaming that. We don't care what you saw. But in a court of law, eyewitness testimony is like chef's kiss, right? That's like, especially a credible witness, right? A credible eyewitness testimony can bring down a trial, any level, right? From the highest crime to the lowest crime. And then especially multiple eyewitness, right? To the same event or whatever they're talking about. So it becomes very powerful. We in fact rely on that to live as a society. We rely on this other standard of evidence that when it comes to the phenomena, we want to ignore. But in a court of law, no big deal. That is kind of odd. Why does the phenomena only have to meet the scientific evidence standard? Why can't it meet the court of law standard to some extent, right? Especially when we're talking about government disclosure, getting bills passed, funding, right? Just saying.
Case of, are there ETs, flesh and blood ETs, to the court, present all the evidence, you should win. There's enough evidence to get an affirmative conviction that that's the case. If you take it to a scientific lab, you're going to have a hard time, meeting the standards of scientific veracity. So part of what's going on is we have different views of what counts as real and what counts as evidence.
Well, for evidence, if you want to prove something exists, you have to have some sort of physical evidence of it.
Right. There's a lot of physical evidence with a phenomenon, right? So like you take abductees, people who have experiences of being abducted, and so there's no smoking gun. So I think this is part of your point. You're pointing out there's no smoking gun. I'm saying you're right. There isn't a smoking gun. We don't have that yet, unless Gary Nolan and his team are able to get the government to roll out one of the crafts that we have in hangar X, Y, and Z.
Gary Nolan.
So we're waiting for the smoking gun, but we don't need the smoking gun to be able to look at all the other evidence and use scientific methodologies and logical methods of deduction and induction to arrive at a very probable conclusion based on that evidence, just as we would in a court of law, right? So there's archaeological evidence, there's sociological evidence, there's lots of experiencer reports, there is physical evidence, like the burns in the grass that Chris Bledsoe showed, right? Even Travis Walton, when they went and they studied the tree growth of the rings where that incident occurred, and there was an anomaly with how the trees that were closer to where the event occurred grew in a different rate than the other trees farther out. So
because of radiation, right?
That's the assumption. There have been implants, there's scars, there's body marks, there's scratches on cars, there's a lot of physical evidence, but it's not a smoking gun. But we should be careful not to dismiss all that physical evidence just because it's not a smoking gun. But when you combine it with all the other elements, it's very suggestive, right? Very, very suggestive.
So out of all of the different hypotheses or all the different examples of what these different intelligences could be, was there any sort of underlying consistency between all of them, or any kind of common denominator across all of them? How many of them did you say there were? 40?
There's 35 different theories that they are all over the board. Some it's ancient aliens, or some it's it's us from the future, right?
Right.
It's some it's they're from other star systems. No, they're from other dimensions. They're So there's a lot of variety, but it's interesting that kind of in the course of human imagination, we've come up with all the possibilities, all the combinations are represented in that list of 37. Right?
It's like aliens are like the Cheesecake Factory menu. They just have everything on it, right?
So you have an approach like SETI that says, there are probably, life on other planets, but it's very far away,
right.
And we're looking for radio signals, and we're trying to kind of tune in to their channel, and they're not coming up with. There's nothing has come out of the SETI project basically over the last 40 plus years with a lot of funding, right? And so it's interesting. You compare that.
Well, hang on, Sean. That's not true, right? I did a video about from Professor Simon Holland, talking about SETI, working on a potential signal that they received that had alien pictures and data in it, right? Alien pictures. That's right. Photographs. So I'll put a link in the description to that video if you want to find out more about it.
With like kind of ufology, which has a lot of craziness in it, but when you pull away a lot of that craziness, there's a lot of evidence, right? You know, like you line up, you get a lot of Chris Bledsoes in the room, you know, and it's like, or you go and hang out with them, you know, and you have multi-witness reports, you have lots of multi-witness reports, you know, and so there is quite a case to be made, and again, I think for me, it often comes back down to, you know, different perceptions based on different subtle bodies, based on different subtle senses associated with those bodies. And because we are still tend to privilege our five senses in our physical body, and we want physical evidence that matches our, you know, vision and our hearing, that we tend to have a very narrow view of what is evidence, right? And so what does a broader but still very scientific and rigorous view of evidence look like that's able to include and compare experiencer reports, able to understand how the brain works in relationship to this phenomena, right? So like, you know, like Gary's research on the basal ganglia, and, you know, how there seems to be this hyperconnectivity.
I'm just saying. Right? Let's be real. The best evidence would be a body, the craft. Even in a court of law, that would help, right? You can't have a murder case without the body, right? Having the murder weapon, you know, helps, right? These, you know, the crux of the case, if you will, right? The MacGuffin of the story. Right, we got to have that thing eventually, and that's what really that's what eludes this topic, right? That quote unquote smoking gun. But let's be real. That would be the best evidence to have. It would shut everything up. Everything up. Right? Prove it once and for all. Because one person's experience, no matter how much good evidence, it might validate that person's experience, but it doesn't then validate the entire phenomena for the world, right? For public consumption, if you will, for society, right? So we've got to have that piece of evidence that is, you know, not connected to a person, like it's a thing, right? The actual alien body or interdimensional body or whatever physical body it is. Some sort of craft or something that's indisputable. Even a video or photographs at this point, I don't know how convincing that would be. Even if it looked great. And maybe multiple angles, maybe some, I don't know. Right? Some huge event, it is recorded. I don't know. Maybe that could work, but I don't know. Anyway.
Right? So one could look at that to say, well, okay, there's this hyperconnectivity, so people are just better at projecting or imagining these phenomena. Or you could say, no, that's an antenna that actually allows them to perceive the phenomena. So kind of the same data point could be used to argue for or against the phenomenon, right? You know, and so, but then when you couple it with like a lot of this other kind of evidence, then, you know, and this is why I feel like the government knows a lot more, at least sections of the government know a lot more than what they're letting on, is because, you know, like I was told by a CIA agent that they actually have a test to determine if you have alien DNA in your system, right? And so maybe not, I don't know. But this person's a trustworthy person. I don't have any reason to believe that they're pulling one over on me. But it's like there's those kinds of things that get said by certain people who seem to have knowledge about these things that just kind of boggle your mind. You know, like Chris, you know, shared several of these kind of things in his interview with you, where you just end up scratching your head. You're like, and there's nothing you can do with it. It's like, well, until they show me the DNA test, you know, like I can't believe it.
Did he give you any more details on that?
Yeah.
Like, how do they get the test, and what do they test for?
Good job, Danny.
No. But
great question.
You know, there's, you know, but so I think the whole idea of like evidence, like we need to like zoom out a little bit and go, hey, what do we mean by evidence? What kinds of evidence would count, and what
which
combination
CIA
of
agent told them
evidences
this?
would be suggestive?
I want to know what CIA agent told them this, right? And yes, how are they doing the test? Have they run the test? How long have they been doing this test? Clearly since the existence of DNA test as a whole, but did it just come soon after? Wouldn't you have to have some sample of alien DNA to then do the test? And even then, wouldn't that just let you know that specific alien, right? You wouldn't know the rest of them, right? So, and maybe when they say alien DNA, they just mean we don't know what it is, so therefore it's alien. Does that make sense? Like it's just alien in the sense of we're just unaware of what it is. Not necessarily extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, or crypto-terrestrial, or anything like that. If that makes sense. Just odd, right? Just not human. Or in any human we've seen or something like that, right? Like, so it could be alien in that sense. Maybe corrupt data. I don't know, guys. My mind just races, right? Think about it. A CIA agent told you. How can you believe that? You can't believe anything a CIA agent is telling you. First of all, that would be super secret classified information, and he's just revealing it to you. You always got to wonder why someone is telling you something. What is their motivation? What do they want you to do with that information? Do they want to make you feel special by giving you that information? Do they want to make you feel afraid? Do they want you to then pass off that information? Right? By maybe using reverse psychology. Don't tell anybody about this. What does that make you want to do? Tell everybody about that thing. Right? So if I say, don't think about a pink elephant, what are you doing right now? Thinking about a pink elephant. Right? It's unusual. This guy seems really nice and really cool. And honestly, this interview on Danny Jones was really good, to be honest. They covered a lot of different points. They had a great conversation. He's very... I don't want to say he's very connected, but the Chris Bledsoe connection is in here, and they don't mention Tim Taylor by name, but they talk about that group of people, which is interesting. Again, it just keeps coming up. Tim Taylor and the NASA group and all that stuff. Anyway, so, but, I'm just saying, it's an interesting scenario, right, to be in. Where you're like, you hear things like this. Oh, we do test. CIA agent told me we do alien. And then the conversation just moves on. That's what we live in this topic. You hear things that are just on a normal day, just crazy. Like what? Stop the presses. Why is that on the front of the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, right? We are testing humans for alien DNA. According to this CIA agent, right? And how would you know? Is it a former CIA agent, a current CIA agent? And he just said it in passing. In what context was he, did he hear that? Was it a personal conversation? Was it a public speech or something he gave to more people? I think that's important to know all those things to kind of, I'm just saying, I don't know. Remember the last time on Danny Jones' podcast with Danny Sheehan brought out that we have these alien tests. The Senate intelligence, I forget what it was. The Senate had seen it. And different, I don't remember who exactly, right? But someone in the Senate or people in the Senate had seen it. And that's it. We just didn't know anything else about it. So Danny Sheehan brings up the same thing, alien DNA test that we have. Is this the same thing? Is this the same CIA agent? Right? Are these things connected? Again, there's a lot of connections behind the scenes that you wouldn't even think of. And a lot of, again, coincidences in this field you can't ignore. There's a reason for them. So, I don't know. That's interesting. So, curious to read the comments on this one, what everyone's going to say. Again, I recommend everyone go watch the rest of this interview. Okay, I'm going to put a link in the description. Go check out the rest. Let me know what you think. All right, quick channel update. Join me tonight for my very first ever evening live stream, 7 p.m. Central Time tonight. Ashton Forbes and I will be hanging out so that y'all can ask Ashton questions about the MH370, and especially based on our interview that we did. But he's going to be there to answer any questions about MH370, and I'm just going to help monitor it, right, and help mod for him, and that's it. Just for vetted viewers, vetters, watch and ask questions, whatever you want, and just hang out with us, right? We're going to have a nice civil discussion about the MH370 videos, and to be honest with you, we're going to move on from it as vetted, right? That's what we did. I did the interview. I'm going to do a live stream with him so he can address your guys' questions and concerns, and then I'm moving on with it. And that's how I want to do this stuff moving forward. Have people present their case, try to do a live stream with it if I can so y'all can ask questions, and then move on to the next case. There's tons of other stuff to look at. So anyway, that's what we're going to be doing tonight. Again, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Tuesday, April 9th. Join us tonight, Ashton and I, on the Vetted YouTube channel. All right, so I'll put a link out later, and y'all will be able to find it. All right, guys, we'll see you on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day's a gift. Peace.